My name is Lady Bird Morgan, and I'm with the Women's Visionary Council. And on the stage with me today are also members of the Women's Visionary Council. In the next 30 minutes, we hope to share with you why it's important to support and amplify the voices of women and elders, men and women. And we're going to start this conversation with an opening and honoring from one of our members, Patricia James.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How many of you thought we'd be here doing this in our lifetimes? So I'd like to begin in a traditional way, because I've been trained deeply in the traditional ways. Wasiwo, hello and welcome. Maheo, hana maheo, hana niskaniwo, hana mocheo, mahayoso, maniwokan. We're giving prayers and thanks to the spirits of the land and the spirits of the place and the spirits of the directions. So I'd like you to take your feet and put them on the ground and get comfortable. Take a moment so we can all arrive. Take a breath. If you like, you can put your hands, cross them over your heart. And we're going to call in the ancestors because we're here because of them. We're standing on their shoulders, so many. And on our left, we bring in our female elders who've dropped their skin. They can be family, they can be somebody you admire. And I'm going to ask you to bring in a quality that's going to help you today and to hear what we're saying and what this whole moment means. And so on our left, we bring in our female ancestors. And on our right, we bring in our male ancestors. And think of the quality of the energy. So the female is a magnetic quality. So who are the people with magnetic quality, those things that we bring into ourselves that you want to bring and support you today? And the same on the right, on male. That's the dynamic energy. That's the energy that we put forward. And as you're breathing, see if you can breathe to the rhythm of your heart. And the inquiry is, who was your first teacher of the heart that you can bring into this conference and into this day? And when you feel that quality, bring it into your heart and weave it through the heart. And that's where integration lies. So take a breath, breathe into the heart, and see if you can find a moment that the heart begins to breathe you. And when the wisdom of the sky and the wisdom of the earth are woven through the human heart, then there will be the time of the rainbow people.
Thank you. Thank you. Annie, as the founder of the council, could you please share why you created this and what it means and why it's important to amplify the voices?
Thank you. I'd be happy to do that, and thank you, Patricia. My name is Annie Oak, also known as Ann Harrison. I'm an event producer and also a journalist. We're here talking about amplifying the voices of elders because the Women's Visionary Council, the organization that we're all part of, has a long history of amplifying the voices of people who often don't have a voice in psychedelic other communities. The WVC grew out of the Women's Congress. This is an event that I founded in 2007 after attending a large conference in Basel, Switzerland to honor Dr. Albert Hoffman, the chemist who first synthesized LSD. It was a large conference and there were about 80 people there and about 4 women speaking. And I thought, well, this isn't right. A lot of the women were caucusing in the hallways and saying, how come our voices aren't represented? This is back in 2006. So, I have this theory that if you want to change the world, throw a better party. And so in 2007, I produced the first Women's Visionary Congress, so named by Carolyn Mountain Girl Garcia, who is with us today. And that was a really great event. I invited 25 women who were working with psychedelics as healers and researchers and activists and artists and spiritual leaders to present their work. And nobody had ever done this before. I actually created a bail fund because I didn't know if we would be harassed, by authorities and considered, an easy target or something. But it was a really successful event, and about 100 people showed up. And in 2008, it seemed clear that we needed to start a nonprofit to continue these events. And so in 2008, I formed together with Maria Mangini and Carolyn Garcia, the Women's Visionary Council, the first nonprofit for psychedelic women. We named it the Women's Visionary Council after the Girl Scout Council because we were all Girl Scouts. And Girl Scouts, we learned a lot of things. And so we started the first women's nonprofit to really host the Women's Congress, and the first women's nonprofit focused on psychedelic women and their work. And we hosted, from 2008 to 2019, we produced a Women's Congress almost every year. And we really gave a lot of women in the psychedelic community as one of their first respectful places to present their work, including many of the women who now lead MAPS and many other organizations within psychedelic communities. And we held these gatherings in Vancouver, Canada, and Seattle, Washington, and New York City, and Santa Fe, and Mexico. And they were always open to people of all genders, always an open event. And in addition to providing a respectful place for women, people of all genders to present their work, we were also real pioneers in presenting harm reduction information. Back in 2014, we began hearing reports of women and other people being harassed, sometimes sexually assaulted, in psychedelic ceremonies or ceremonies that used psychoactive materials. And so in 2014, we presented and put together, based on our collective wisdom, safety tips for people who are participating in these ceremonies, and also advice for people presenting and organizing events where psychedelics are used, and also advice that Maria gave us for psychic self-defense. And we taught these classes as well. You can read this information on our website, visionarycongress.org, or come to our booth and talk with us directly, and we'll give you printed copies of that material, booth 1014. So the other thing that the WVC did that was really ahead of its time is we started offering harm reduction information. We taught people how to use naloxone to prevent opioid overdose. We taught people how to use reagent kits to test their drugs for adulterants and to make sure that they were ingesting the substances they thought they were ingesting. And we made videos about this, and we really were far ahead of our time, and I think are still doing this work to really reach out to communities and provide fact-based harm reduction information. We care about our communities. And finally, one thing that we always focused on was providing an opportunity for the passage and the transfer of intergenerational wisdom, for elders to offer their wisdom to younger people, as they do in all traditional communities, and for younger people to also offer their wisdom back. And earlier this year, the WVC board, and you're looking at a board right here, decided, and Carolyn is our emerita board member, we decided to really shift our focus from amplifying and promoting the work of women. We've declared victory with that, and we've played a big role in our years. Let's do that. And now we're really amplifying the voices and the wisdom of elders, another underrepresented group whose wisdom we greatly need at this particular moment. And we're also bringing back the Women's Congress this year, which has been in hiatus since 2019. And our executive director, Christina Soriano, will tell us more about that. We invite you to join us for the Women's Congress and other events. Come talk to us at our booth. And come and be in dialogue with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Yeah. Maria? Yeah, no, because we are just going to come back to you because you didn't get your moment. It's so important to hear about what the council is doing and who we are. And we wanted to also hear, Patricia, from you because you've walked in these two different worlds of the sacred, carrying the sacred and carrying the Western ways in academia. And if you could speak to what that means to be an elder with that role, please.
In retrospect, thinking about this, I realized I was living a double life for about 40 years, as many of us have, and Maria's going to speak to it more. So in the Western domain, I was successful, and people didn't know what I did, not even my family. At the same time, I was taken in by multiple traditional cultures because I wanted to learn cross-cultural traditions, which is 85% of the cultures have traceable ways of being that are similar for over 100 years or 1,000 years. Those are perennial wisdoms. And essentially, they're best practices of humanity. And that caught my attention. But my heart was in my Native American blood and the experience of traditional cultures that held medicine and psychoactive plants as the formation of their community and their ways. So the goal ultimately for my teachers was to hold both worlds simultaneously, to have feet in the seen and the unseen. And so what that really meant was a lot of practices and not a lot of sleep. And ultimately, until you become what it is that you're practicing, and then you learn more. And so I want to leave you, because it's so important as people enter this world of psychedelic medicines and practices, and actually, as elders, I'm realizing I'm entering another initiatory phase where my practices are going to be my guide. And one of my, Angela Zarian was a mentor of mine for nearly 38 years before she died. And I went to her with a question that I couldn't figure out, something that had happened to me. Nobody else could figure it out. And she said, I don't know. And I was crestfallen and distraught. And she said, go to your practices. This is what they're for. This is where you get your answers when you don't know. And so practice means that they're meant to be active, rigorous, and dynamic. And so your practice is to take daily action that supports change and provides a discipline for incorporating and strengthening new values, skills, and character qualities. And we can't get those from hacks.
Maria, you have been carrying this work for so many years as someone who remembers the context of how to land back into reality once you journey. Can you please speak to what you're seeing and what's concerning you?
Well, I have to concur with Patricia. I wouldn't have ever believed that this would have ever happened in my lifetime. And it's kind of miraculous in a certain way, but it also gives me a certain level of concern because I'm worried that the popularity of the interest and activity in this area, which has been so quiet and so secret and so reprehended and so protected for so many years, will, by emerging into the consumer reality or into the world of fashion, will be in some way dried out or desiccated or leveled in the way that that consumer reality has a tendency to do. And this worries me because I appreciate the way in which the very thoughtful research has grounded the practice of therapeutic use for psychedelics in the larger culture with a conversation about that is perfectly natural and normal for people to engage in. But I don't want to see the weirdness squeezed out of the psychedelic experience. I think the very informative and heartfelt panel that we just listened to is a real example of how commercial normalcy just doesn't cover it. You know, and there are so many things that involve improvisation and risk and nonsense and magic that we really need to keep a lot alert for and to cherish, and not to think that science and technology and expertise and professionalism are enough. The rest of that stuff is absolutely vital.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Christina, as one of the newer members and younger members like myself, as also the executive director of the council, could you please speak to why it's important to you as a younger person to be a part of this work and what the council is up to?
Yes, thank you. It's so important, and thank you, Maria, Annie, and Patricia. I joined the WBC in 2020. I was part of the decriminalized entheogenic plan, so I spoke to City Council in Oakland and gave my testimony, and it was passed unanimously. And I was so moved that I went up to someone, Amber Center, and she said, let me put you in touch with Danielle Schumacher, an emerita. And Danielle said, you should join the board. And I felt so welcomed. I accepted, and I just found the need and filled it. And I really look to Maria, Annie, and Patricia for the cues of how to have a presence, a respectful and reverent presence. And I really appreciate that. And my role as executive director is to help get the message across in all of our different ways, platforms. So when 2020 happened, lockdown was like, you don't have a Zoom link? I can give you a Zoom link. And so we have, since we've revamped our website, as Annie mentioned, it's visionarycongress.org. And on there you can sign up to become a member, sign up for our newsletter, and to donate. Our fundraising goal is $100,000, but what we really want is to start an endowment for elders to feel, these pioneers, to feel secure. Because if you're a psychedelic pioneer, you're an outlaw. And there's no retirement fund for that, and so we would like to be in the position to help support. Looking ahead, we'll have monthly reading groups, and in a little bit over 2 weeks, we are organizing the memorial for a WBC advisor, author, just remarkable woman, Anne Shulgin. Anne Shulgin passed July 9th. And so this is the year of her passing. And the memorial will be at Zellerbach Auditorium in Berkeley. And we need volunteers, so please come help us. On our website, you can see one of Anne's last speeches, talks that she gave about the shadow. And she has a light. She wrote it out in long form, and she just read it, and it's so moving. I really encourage you to watch it if you haven't already. And then, as Mandy mentioned, we have our first in-person Congress since 2019. That's going to happen first weekend in October, and it's also going to be in Berkeley. Lastly, here at the conference, come by and visit our booth. It's number 1014 across from the Headshot Lounge, which is on the right side wall. In there we have a box, Ask Me Anything box, and you can put in your question because we won't have time for a Q&A here for the panel. So I invite you to ask your question and give us good questions.
Thank you, Christina. You know, we are so short on time, and we have such a remarkable group of women on this stage right now. As you can see at the end of the line, there's a guest visitor with us. And one of the questions that we had was just about why it matters to care about elders, but also how do we keep the trickster energy alive in this work?
Well, as we're all going to be elders someday, so we better care about it. Once we have our repositories of wisdom and experience, and actually can teach you how to change a flat tire in the rain as well. So we all have experienced years going by. As I regret to qualify myself as an elder, but here we are. This is the point. We really have learned a lot of things, but we've also moved the discussion along in a collaborative way with other women. And the Women's Visionary Congress and Council has done a wonderful job of that. I felt like back at the beginning of that, the whole psychedelic movement seemed to be managed by men in many ways. And yet we knew perfectly well that we had a mission. And so by developing that mission into a women's gathering, in a repetitive mode, we do this frequently or infrequently, as it were, but it's very important because women do have a slightly different viewpoint and a little different in their discussion tactics and motives. We really have a lot to share with each other, and that's the most important thing about getting together at these events. Is this moment of sharing of whatever our underlying truths are that involve our psychedelic realizations that we've had. Because we all have them, and they're all a little different. And it is a book that cannot be written. It cannot be written because it is too delicate and too personal for most of us. So we have a wonderful legacy of being together, and we need to build on that legacy as we go. So, write down your neighbor's name and address, send them a postcard. It is important for us to stay in touch as we pursue our psychedelic interests and as we get a little older and a little smarter. And we will proceed from here, won't we?
Thank you.
This question, why would we want to amplify the voices of elders, has been one that we've been thinking about and chewing up. And there's a fair number of reasons. Like human existence is a kind of process of accepting different kinds of endings, including the one that has your personal name on it. And elders have, I think, had a lot of experience with that and learned how to do that a bunch. But the other thing that I think is really important in this specific context is that the realm that I was talking about that I think is so delicate and precious that we don't want to let go of and leave out when we consider these things is the one in which all the inanimate objects, the spirits of place, the naiads in the spring, the fairies, the elves, the leprechauns, the unseen forces and the energies that these substances give us access to appreciate. I think that oftentimes the elders have had an opportunity to really practice those skills, so they understand how to access the world where those things are very influential and present. They understand what rhythms it functions by. They know what safeguards need to be in place in order to access it in a respectful way. They know how to treat it respectfully and be healthy in engaging with that, because this is a largely unknown realm for the larger society that we live in. I think people don't appreciate that there are safety steps that it's important for people to take when they venture into these realms. So I think it's much more likely that elders are going to be able to inform people about that just because of intense life experience.
Thank you, Maria. Annie, would you like to?
Elders have had a lot of fun. Oh boy. The women you see here on the stage have had some big fun over the years, made big fun, hosted big fun, and held big fun for a lot of other people. And it's really important to remember, and thank you, Carolyn Maltongrove Garcia, for reminding us to hold on to that LSD prankster, trickster energy, always in the midst of sometimes very serious discussions, and keep that energy alive.
I'd like to encourage us all to take care of what takes care of us.
Beautiful way to end this conversation. 30 minutes is so short. I'm so grateful that you came. I want to echo what Christina said, that having the opportunity to share the voices of the elder women for me is paramount. To doing anything, actually, not even working in psychedelics, but just to living a life of integrity. And so I really encourage you to talk to your elders, meet your elders, spend time with your elders. Don't wait for them to come to you. There is time, even though we seem like we don't have time, we do have time, and it's really important. And please come to the booth, which is across from the headshot area. We have a box there where you can actually put questions that you have for elders, and they will be answered by this panel online at some point in the near future. And Annie is going to say something.
We'll be there all week long, and you can come by and talk with us if you have questions for elders or just want to check in and say hello. We'd be happy to talk with you. And we also have printouts of some of the information on our website, our safety tips, our safety recommendations for people who produce events where psychedelics are present, and also our tips for psychic self-defense. I'm going to pass the mic on to others.
I think we're about done.
Yeah.
But I just want to say one thing that is a spontaneous reaction to other speakers who have been here today, which is that, you know, we identify ourselves as the Women's Visionary Council, but I think it was Angela who very beautifully said that the male-female spectrum is a quality of energy that we all possess all varieties of, and so that use of the language that we're kind of limited by in order to talk about some things does not imply that we're stuck in that mode, and so this is you could think of this as the Humans Visionary Council.
We have stickers, so come on up. Thank you.